I made a mistake a couple of years ago that just cost me nearly $1,000 to fix. As you guys know, I've been having computer troubles again over the past couple of days, and my channel has been kind of out of commission as a result. Luckily, all of that's been fixed now, and I'm able to get back to recording videos for you guys, but I want to talk about exactly what happened because it's quite the story, and also, hopefully, it'll be helpful for anyone looking to make a new PC in the future. Now, of course, this is going to have some technical aspects to it, but I'm still going to try and tell the story in a way that you'll be able to understand even if you don't really know much about computer hardware. So, let's go back in time to April 2023. I was using a very middle-of-the-road desktop, and I was looking to spend my hard-earned YouTube dollars on a substantial upgrade to my PC. I wanted a whole new computer that was going to be robust and powerful for years into the future, so I can make better content and just enjoy using my computer more. The main thing I was looking for at the time was the next-gen, state-of-the-art, revolutionary RTX 4090, which was the best GPU on the market at the time. Obviously, nowadays, they've come out with newer models since then, but the RTX 4090 is still a phenomenal GPU. And so, I was searching around for a bunch of pre-made computers that had this GPU installed. Now, some tech heads in my audience are already going to be like, oh, you went and got a pre-made? Listen, making a computer from scratch is very daunting for most people, myself included, and frankly, I'd rather just get to making videos rather than spending a bunch of time trying to figure out what components go with what and trying to build a whole computer myself. Especially because, well, I don't really know what I'm doing and I don't want to potentially break something that's worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. So, that's why I went searching for a pre-made. And honestly, pre-mades aren't that terrible as long as you make sure that they've got the right components and they're from someone who is a reputable PC manufacturer. So the PC I ended up settling on, of course, had this RTX 4090 in it, and it also had some pretty good components in it too. It had an Intel 13th gen CPU, which, that also ended up having some problems, but that's a separate story, and it's all fixed up now. It's working amazingly, but yeah, those chips just apparently had some kind of issue with them that I couldn't have possibly known about when I actually bought the computer. But besides that, the motherboard has been great. I bought some RAM for the computer that's been great. All the components have been working very well. Except for the SSD. When I bought this computer, I was not even remotely thinking about the SSD. I just saw on the manufacturer's website, oh, this has 2 terabytes of storage on my drive? Wow, that's cool. Anyways, moving on, tell me more about that GPU. And so I just bought the computer with the specific SSD that it had without question. Now, the SSD in this computer is a Kingston drive, and it has this whole complicated name on it. Doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it? But regardless, this specific model is very important because it is the root of the problem that I ended up having over the next couple of years. And so for the first year or so, things were pretty smooth sailing with my computer, apart from that CPU issue, which eventually I solved. But eventually, I got the first of many freezes to come. So, mysteriously, out of nowhere, my computer just froze up, and I had absolutely no idea why. I could still barely click on things, and some applications were still barely working, but I couldn't really use my PC. It was so frozen. I had to power it off forcibly by holding the power button and then reboot it, and then on the reboot, everything was fine. That's that's a little strange. The first time this happened, I didn't have my task manager open, I didn't really know what was happening, and, well, everything worked fine after, so I assumed it was just some kind of random freak occurrence. And then, nothing happened for multiple months, until eventually the problem struck again. A freeze happened, I had to force power off my computer, And once again, I was kind of bewildered by this. And this kind of just kept happening. I would have this incident happen, and then it would just go away. Months and months later, it would come back, and the cycle would repeat. And over time, as these started to happen more and more, I started to get a little bit paranoid and keep my task manager up more frequently so I could see what was happening with my computer components. And I realized that my disk usage, when this freeze happened, would spike all the way up to 100%, and it would not relent. Eventually, in the task manager, you would just see this wall of green showing 100% disk usage. And, well, naturally, my first inclination was to do a Google search for, hey, how can I fix 100% disk usage on Windows 11? And that gave a whole bunch of different software solutions, doing scans and trying to tweak different settings to make it so that my drive would cooperate. And oftentimes, when this freeze would happen, I would run those scans, and then the freeze wouldn't pop up for months and months and months, and so I assumed I had fixed it until, the next time that it happened. And this led me to believe for a long time that, perhaps, I don't know, after enough Windows updates or enough uptime on my computer, eventually some kind of Windows file would corrupt or start malfunctioning, and I would need to run the scan to fix it, and then everything would be fine. But that was not even remotely what was going on under the surface. But when I tell you I was losing my mind trying to fix this issue once and for all, I was going a little crazy, and some of you guys might remember last autumn, I tried to do something a little bit silly to fix this issue. I ran a check disk on my drive, and then I interrupted said check disk about 8 hours into its operation and completely bricked my Windows installation and had to reinstall Windows, and that was a whole hassle. And it all stemmed from me trying to solve this issue when I realized now that that was nowhere even remotely close to across the street from the ballpark of where I needed to be investigating. And something curious I eventually noticed about this issue is that while the whole brick of 100% usage was happening on my disk, none of my programs were actually contributing to this. If I looked at the program usage individually in Task Manager, none of them were even above 0.1%, which that's concerning. And then when I looked at the actual read-write speed of the drive, both of them were at 0 kilobytes per second. Nothing was being read, nothing was being written. It was a proper freeze where the drive just wasn't responding. So now let's bring it back to the present. About a week ago, this issue reared its ugly head again, but unlike the previous times, this time it was here to stay. And while I would reboot my computer and things would be fine for a bit, this issue would just keep popping back up and up and up again. And it got to the point where I realized that something was seriously going wrong here. And every time this happened, I had to force power off my computer and reboot, and when this issue would happen, it basically rendered my computer unusable, and so this was seriously affecting my ability to use my computer. And Wednesday of last week was really the last straw for me. I honestly don't even know how I managed to stream that day, because this issue happened to me 3 separate times. I booted up my computer, launched Deadlock and OBS, and then freeze. Had to power off my computer, boot it back up again. And then somehow I made it through a 3-hour-long stream. Left my computer running, came back an hour later, wanted to launch Deadlock to do some experimentation, and then freeze. Oh boy, that's frustrating. Okay, let's power it off, turn it back on again, and then try to launch Deadlock and OBS again, and then freeze again. Oh boy. This is concerning. And it was at this point that I had decided, well, I should probably stop using my computer and create a serious plan of action here to figure out and get to the bottom of this and fix my computer once and for all. Now, I had been banging my head against the wall of this issue for about 2 years, on and off, and I felt like I had thoroughly exhausted my own research capabilities. So, I did something novel that I hadn't tried before. I typed up a very long and detailed prompt explaining everything that was happening with this issue and submitted it to Gemini, Google's AI chatbot assistant. And I know that this is risky and that AI can make mistakes. I've learned to be skeptical and verify everything that the AI is saying myself. I've actually been burned by AI before. If you watched the video where I discussed my whole issue with the check disk and having to reinstall Windows and all that crap, one of the problems that led to me feeling more confident to complete the check disk was the AI saying, yeah, it's probably okay to interrupt the check disk, even though that was absolutely not the case. And also, the AI gave two completely conflicting responses to the same prompt based on whether I typed it in on my phone or on my computer. One of the AI responses said, yeah, it's probably okay. And the other AI response said, no, this is a terrible idea, don't do it. Which, yeah, I don't know how that happened, but regardless, yeah. I am very healthily skeptical of AI, but regardless, I still have found it to be a useful tool for brainstorming and kind of acting as a starting point from which I can do my own research. And what Gemini responded with completely blew open a whole new path of research for this issue. You see, I had been stuck in the mindset of searching for solutions to a 100% disk issue on Windows, doing different software things, setting things, stuff like that. But what I hadn't actually tried to do was search for the specific model of SSD that I have. And, well, when I read Gemini's response, I realized that the specific model of Kingston SSD that I have is known to have this issue. Many people have had this issue, and I did a bunch more research into the drive myself and discovered that, yeah, it's just kind of broken. The more you use the drive, the more you fill it up, the more likely it is to freeze in this way. And it's because the drive is an extremely cheap budget drive that's just not really forged out of good quality components. And furthermore, it lacks any DRAM, which also contributes to this issue of the drive freezing because its controller is just like messed up, it's freaking out, and it's not functioning properly. When I bought my computer back in 2023, I felt like I was getting a pretty good deal in regards to the price. And now I know why. Of course, it had some genuinely good components like the RTX 4090 and the Intel CPU, minus that whole issue that had to get smoothed over. But it appears that they skimped on the SSD, and also the base PC only came with 16 gigs of RAM. I replaced that with my own RAM, and that RAM, also Kingston brand by the way, has been phenomenal. So, that's when I realized that it was probably high time to get a replacement SSD, because this SSD is clearly on its last leg considering how frequently this issue is happening now, and while there is a firmware update that could potentially fix the issue on the drive, the risk of doing a firmware update on an SSD is that if something goes wrong, you can potentially brick the SSD and lose that data. And, well, I didn't necessarily want to risk doing a firmware update on a drive that I know is having issues when I don't have a backup drive. But if I'm going to get a backup drive, why not just use that drive in my computer and ditch this faulty Kingston? So I did hours of research trying to find the best path forward and find a suitable replacement SSD. I wanted an SSD that had the same storage capacity, that also was extremely reliable and had a good reputation over multiple years, and that would end up being an upgrade for my PC because long term, I want something that is a good piece of tech. I wanted it to be faster and just have a better lifespan overall. And so So what I ended up settling on was the Samsung 990 Pro, which is an SSD that's been out for a few years now. It had one small issue on release that was fixed with the latest firmware updates, and a lot of people have just had a great experience with this SSD. It's extremely fast, and it also has some DRAM in it, which should make it more consistent. And furthermore, it was the only SSD that I looked at that I would have been able to purchase right away. All the other ones I would have had to ship in over multiple days, and yeah, I just didn't want to wait that long because I wanted to get back to making videos and just put this whole situation behind me. So that's what I ended up settling on. But the unfortunate thing about buying a high-end SSD in today's PC market is that it's ridiculously expensive. PC components have been going through a sort of supply crisis because of the AI boom, and also other world events have just led to things getting more and more expensive over time, and so this SSD ended up costing way more than it had any right to. And for a few reasons, including peace of mind, making sure that it's done right the first time, and just relieving me of having to do more research and tinker with my computer even more, I decided to take my computer to a technician to have him do the swap and just help me get my data from my previous drive onto my new drive. He's a local guy in town who's absolutely phenomenal, and I would recommend him here on the channel, except I don't want to dox him or myself, so we're not gonna do that. But yeah, I took it into the shop, and he was able to do the swap successfully and create a new Windows installation on this brand new drive. He ensured that the firmware was completely up to date, and the drive came with the most updated firmware installed, thankfully, so that was all just amazing. It was an incredibly smooth transfer, and I also managed to get this sort of USB dongle thing where I can stick the old SSD in and plug the USB into my computer and access all the data that way. And so I brought the computer back home and began the process of setting up my computer, getting all my apps and stuff, transferring all my data. And something that happened when I was transferring my data felt completely vindicating in an odd sort of way. It cleared up any doubt in my mind and made it indisputable that the drive was the problem. It's because when I was transferring a whole bunch of files from one of my folders over to my new SSD, you'll never guess what my old Kingston drive did again. Yeah, it froze. It threw the exact same issue up again, where it was at 100% usage with 0 read write. And I mean, yeah, it's kind of annoying that it did that, but also, it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that I did the right thing with swapping this SSD out, and that it was undeniably the SSD and not anything to do with Windows or anything to do with something else in my computer. It was the drive, and now that I've swapped the drive out, my computer is going to be running absolutely incredibly for the foreseeable future. So to make a long story short, I bought a pre-made computer back in 2023 that had some really good components, but also some cheaply made components that I didn't really bother to check on because they weren't the main draw of the computer for me. One of those cheaply made components was the SSD, which over time started to cause me issues where it would jump up to 100% disk usage with 0 read-write, and I would have to shut off my computer, reboot it, and, well, then everything would mysteriously go back to normal. This happened extremely sporadically and extremely randomly, but over the years it started to happen more frequently, and I was bashing my head against a wall trying to figure out how to fix this issue with various software-related fixes, when that wasn't actually the problem. Eventually, this April 2026, the issue became so prevalent that I stopped using my computer and did a whole bunch of research into my drive, only to discover that the specific drive model was cheaply made and is known to have this issue. I made a plan to swap out the drive and found an upgraded drive that ended up being pretty expensive. But it is a very good drive, very reliable, and overall just a much better build quality than the old drive that I had. I installed it into my PC, and now my PC is running excellently. But between the cost of the drive and the cost of the repair and consultation and all that, this whole ordeal ended up costing me about $900, almost $1,000. And I also bought a new mouse during that time too, and so if we add that into the cost, even though it doesn't actually have anything to do with the issue, then I spent about $1,000 this these past couple days on my computer, which is an absolute nightmare. Had I done the due diligence to buy a computer with a better SSD the first time around, then I wouldn't have spent nearly as much money as I did now, because I would have just bought a better SSD back when SSDs were a lot cheaper, and I wouldn't have had to spend the extra money to go and consult with a computer technician. So the moral of the story is, if you're going to buy a computer, whether you're building it yourself or whether you're just going for a pre-made, try and make sure that every single part of the computer is made using a component that is well vetted and has a good reputation. It doesn't matter how unimportant you might think that component is. I was so hyper-focused on the GPU and the CPU when I bought my computer that I didn't even give the SSD a second thought. But a poorly made SSD can absolutely wreak havoc on your system and make using your computer a miserable experience. And so check every single component thoroughly. And sometimes going for the latest new technology is a bit of a gamble, and it can be better to go for something that is a little bit older and has had more time to build up a reputation, so you can know if other people have been having problems with this specific piece of hardware. You can still find some blazing fast, really good components out there that have a safer reputation than something that is fresh off the line and more experimental. And if you're having an issue with your computer and you're bashing your head against a wall trying to find fixes for the same Google search of like 100% disk usage or something like that, try typing in the model of the component that's giving you an issue, because you might just discover it has nothing to do with Windows, nothing to do with any software, and everything to do with the actual hardware component just being faulty. And if you're really having trouble, hey, bringing your issue to an AI can maybe help you find a breakthrough in your problem. Don't take what the AI says for granted. Do your own research and vet everything that the AI is setting, and use it as a brainstorming tool and a jump-off point rather than the final end-all be-all. Don't take the AI's word as gospel, but it can still be a very helpful collaborator if you know how to use it. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video, and I am really looking forward to getting back to making regular Deadlock content on this channel now that my computer is working again. And if you want to help me fix this burning hole that I've got in my pocket now, the least you can do is drop a like on this video, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. All of those help to promote this video in the algorithm and generate more ad revenue so I can recoup the cost of repairing my computer. And if you want to help more substantially and actually give me some money, then consider becoming a member on the channel here. For as little as $2 a month, you can get some sweet perks on the YouTube channel, in live streams and all that, and it really helps me out a ton, so I would appreciate it if you would check that out. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.